Greetings, my people. It's Mr. PDT yet again on another episode of the Enlightenment series. So, following up to the previous two episodes that I have done concerning the reckless utterances of Emmanuel Makandiwa claiming that he is more gifted than God, it got me thinking. Look, I've actually been trying to connect the dots. You know, like what Steve Jobs once said, that you can only connect the dots by looking backwards. So I had to take some time to reflect and try to understand what exactly could be Emmanuel Makandiwa insinuating. This guy is onto something. And I must tell you, now I am on the very same page with him. I understood what he meant, the gist behind that statement that he gave. Some of other people, I myself thought it was reckless, and I thought he was boastful, and I thought he was out of line. But come to think of it, the gent is in his right senses. When he said that he's more gifted than God, the God he was referring to has nothing to do with the God in this book, with the God reflected by these scriptures. The God that you know, or the God that I know, as Christians that we are, has nothing to do with the God that Emmanuel Makandiwa was referring to. So we must pardon him for everything we have said already, or all the questions we have been trying, and all the analysis that we have been trying to do based on the statements that he gave about him being more gifted than God. When I told you that I had to look back and try to connect some dots, I remembered that there's a time when I started with Emmanuel Makandiwa. To those of you who are meeting me for the first time, Emmanuel Makandiwa is the first charlatan that I logged horns with. He's the first charlatan that I started by exposing. And I've always been having this burning desire to get back again at Emmanuel Makandiwa, to have a second round with him. But be that as it may, I had to do a reflection to try to understand what exactly was Emmanuel Makandiwa trying to say. Then I remembered, like I always tell you, my people, that these people are not submitting to the same God that we are submitting, the God of the Bible. And I want to ask a question. I want to throw a curveball. This is a curveball to Zimbabweans, or to loyal or die-hard followers of Emmanuel Makandiwa that have been with him from the time that he started, or around 2010, 2011, and 2012. If you're with Emmanuel Makandiwa from 2010, 2011, and 2012, you must be able to relate to what I'm about to say now, because it will give you an understanding of where I'm coming from and where I'm going. I once mentioned of a particular woman called My Grace. I want to tell you a very short story. There's a woman called My Grace who came in the limelight around 2011. If you're from H-Town, if you're from Harare, or if you're from Zim, especially if you're from Mbari, you know Mbari, that area that is close to the CBD, that is close to Harare, you must definitely know this woman. If you've been with Makandiwa since 2010, 2011, and 2012, or if you've been following Makandiwa from that time, that area, you must know this woman called My Grace. So what was My Grace known for? She was called a vagabond prophetess. I once spoke about this woman some time ago. But at that time when I was talking about Emmanuel Makandiwa, I really didn't have quite an audience. I was just talking to Emmanuel Makandiwa and maybe his few brothers that knew me, and maybe my few brothers that knew me. But it's quite a privilege now that I have quite a lot of ears that are listening to me. And if you are from Mbari, I would want you to tag someone that is from Mbari, that is originally from Mbari, that has been in Mbari for quite a long time, and ask them if they remember a woman, a vagabond prophetess from Harare or from Mbari called My Praise. This woman was so powerful, but she was very ritualistic. She was practicing dark magic. She was doing all sorts of rituals, helping people. The reason why she was called a vagabond prophetess is because she had no place of origin. She just came from nowhere and she established a shrine in a place called Mbare in Harare. And people started coming to that small shrine. It was a very dirty place, but people would flock in their numbers for healing, for prophecies, for different kind of charms. Politicians would visit this woman. Other pastors that wanted power would visit this woman at night, that is. And to see this woman, you had to pay, I think it was about $5, $10 or something like that. She was the talk of the town at that particular moment in time. And that was the time when Makandiwa was rising to power, to fame, around 2011. So like I said, if you're from Mbare, if you know this particular woman called My Praise, please, please, I beg you, I just need one person. I know most will be afraid to come out and say, yes, we know that woman. But if you're from Mbare or if you're from Harare, you know this woman. And if you've been with Makandiwa from 2010, 11, and 12, you know this woman called My Praise. And how do you know this woman? If you're a Makandiwa follower from that time, I'm going to explain. As powerful as this woman was, she was a traditionalist, but she was being called a vagabond prophetess. She had her common shrine on the pavement, but people would gather to a point whereby ZANU-PF youth started, maintaining order around that shrine and making sure that if anyone wants to see My Praise, they have to pay a specific amount of money. She was now well guarded, even though she was a vagabond prophetess. She had no car, no house, no nothing. I think she had a daughter that she was always with. So when she's doing all these rituals and when she's working for people, she was always seen with this particular daughter of hers. So as her name was growing and growing and growing, as masses were flooding and coming to this shrine to get all forms of help from this woman, it got to a point that it became a threat to Emmanuel Makandiwa. Because that was the very same time when Emmanuel Makandiwa was filling up city sports. So she became a rival of Emmanuel Makandiwa. Because at that time, Makandiwa, was not doing all these things of prophecy. He was very weak. He was not even known for prophesying. He was still fresh from AFM. He was still doing these preachings of his and teachings that are heretic as well. He was not yet known for anything at that time. Hubert Angel had not yet taken Emmanuel Makandiwa to Ghana. Because it's Hubert Angel who took Emmanuel Makandiwa to Kusi Boateng. And when he came back from Kusi Boateng, he still did not even have power. He started coming and started faking miracles. Do you still remember the 3-day baby miracle that Makandiwa performed? Makandiwa prayed for a woman to become pregnant in 3 days. And she conceived in 3 days. She gave birth in 3 days. They were theming that whole miracle performance, miracle baby. It was a miracle baby that was born in 3 days. But it so happened that they started claiming again that that baby died. He did so many dubious miracles. Miracle weight loss. These all things, they started with Emmanuel Makandiwa and Hubert Angel. Miracle money. It started with Makandiwa and Hubert Angel. All this nonsense that is being taken over by these youngsters, these baby charlatans of today. These are the main pioneers of the prophetic. That's why it's important for you to get this part and understand where this is coming from and where this is going. Before you lose me in my explanation, my main focus was on zooming in or beaming more light to the statement that Emmanuel Makandiwa gave, saying that he's more gifted than God. Who is Emmanuel Makandiwa's God? I told you that My Praise became a threat to Emmanuel Makandiwa. I'm just going to be scraping the surface on this episode until someone comes out and tell me that they know My Praise, and then we are going to go deeper. When this My Praise became a rival, a threat, a competition to Emmanuel Makandiwa, because all the ministers that used to go to Emmanuel Makandiwa, they were now going to My Praise. When they realized Emmanuel Makandiwa has no power, they said, no, why can't we go to someone who has more power, who can deliver us from our sins, or who can give us better solutions than this tall guy that you will just be preaching nonsense, heretic heresies and blaspheming in front of us. Makandiwa approached this woman, visited her at night. I don't know what they spoke about, but one thing I know, that most of you know, if you were members of Emmanuel Makandiwa's church around 2010, 11, and 12, this very same woman was brought to Emmanuel Makandiwa's church, and she was introduced as a mighty woman of God, as a prophetess of God. Remember, this woman was a ritualistic woman. All her rituals involved slaughtering of chickens. It involved bringing goats and slaughtering goats. It involved all these traditional ways of conducting business. But when Emmanuel Makandiwa went to meet this woman at night, the following Sunday, she was introduced in Emmanuel Makandiwa's church in the City Sports Stadium. I'm saying this so that so many of you can connect. And Emmanuel Makandiwa called this woman a mighty woman of God, a powerful woman of God. What else happened is the question. Emmanuel Makandiwa told his members to contribute money so that they can buy a house for this woman, for my praise. And a house was bought for my praise. After this introduction in Makandiwa's church, my praise was never heard of. The shrine in Mbare was never heard of. All the healings and miracles that my praise was doing in Mbare were never heard of. That was the end of my praise. The question to ask now is, where is my praise? What happened to my praise? What happened to the house that members contributed to buy a house for my praise? What happened to that house? My praise is still very much alive. I'm not saying this to create panic so that most of you can think my praise disappeared. No, she's still very much alive. The question is, what role is she playing in Emmanuel Makandiwa's life? Remember, she was introduced as a mighty woman. Remember, she was very influential in Mbare. She was doing healing miracles. She was helping people there in Mbare at her shrine. Could my praise be Emmanuel Makandiwa's God? Definitely, Emmanuel Makandiwa's God that he was referring to, he can never be Kusi Boateng, because Kusi Boateng is powerless. He has nothing. He has no single power in his body. He knows nothing about power. He can't do nothing. He's just an empty vessel, Kusi Boateng. He's a fraudster, actually. There's a very big cathedral scandal in Ghana right now that is implicating Kusi Boateng. He has multiple identities. There's a scheme that he was running that he siphoned billions of dollars. We'll look into that later. But now we're just trying to understand Emmanuel Makandiwa's statement when he said he has more gifts than God. Could the God of Emmanuel Makandiwa be my praise? Because definitely she must be the source of Emmanuel Makandiwa's gimmicks and most of the rituals that he was making his members perform. It was after Emmanuel Makandiwa adopted my praise. When he adopted my praise, that's when there was a baby. A few months down the line. Most of you might not remember this, but let me sharpen your memory. There was a baby that went missing. It was it a crossover night of Emmanuel Makandiwa, or it was just a normal program that was being held at Emmanuel Makandiwa's church? There was a baby that went missing during service. It was a 7-year-old baby, 7-year-old boy. And this baby went missing for 3 days. They looked for that baby everywhere. They couldn't find that baby. This baby was only found after 3 days outside the premises of City Sports. After 3 days, when the body was already decomposing. And this story was never carried by any media house in Zimbabwe. No one was ever accused of anything. But this baby was found dead already. Was the baby sacrificed? And it's not only the baby that has died in Emmanuel Makandiwa's shrine. We've spoken about pastors that just go just like that. We've spoken about several things. Mysterious deaths in Emmanuel Makandiwa's, high rate of divorce, all these things, mysterious things taking place. And we've also raised an issue of why does Makandiwa not turn up for funerals or burials of his close members, of his pastors. No matter how close you are to Makandiwa, if you die today, you'll never come to your funeral. You'll never. Look at Keta. Look at Tembo, Pastor Keta. Look at all the influential pastors that were ever. In the recent one, I forgot his name, who died before Christmas. Was it after Christmas? Somewhere around that time. He's never shown up for any of those. The question that we're trying to understand here is, what role is my praise playing in Emmanuel Makandiwa's life? I told you we connect dots by looking backwards. Because most of you just follow these people without having a revelation of where they are coming from. If you don't know how they started, then you just catch this whole wave at a stage whereby it's going to corrupt you. You find yourself in covenants. You find yourself affiliated to certain rituals that you never intended to be part of. You think you're doing things of God, but you're in the midst of an occultic shrine, of an occultic ministry. So still, the question remains, when Makandiwa said he has more gifts than God, he's gifted more than God, he's better than God. Which God? The one with a small letter G? It can never be our God or my God. Makandiwa is a useless boy compared to my God. He's nothing. He is not absolutely nothing. He's a nobody. Don't be fooled by all this money that they have accumulated by stealing from people. That is nothing. All that is vanity. But for him to boast and try to confuse people, to make people think that he's referring to our God, that was the biggest blunder of his miserable life. He is nothing, Makandiwa. He's a nobody. He's a nothing, non-entity. For him to be compared with my God, never. We can never allow that confusion to roam in the Christendom. Never. He was not talking about my God. He was referring to my praise. My praise is Emmanuel Makandiwa's God. She is the one that directs Emmanuel Makandiwa's steps. Like I said during the course of the video, if you know my praise, please let me know. I don't want you to tell me anything. I just want you to confirm that you know her. That's all. And then I'll bring you the full flesh of this carcass, the full story behind Emmanuel Shingirai Chirume, the guy that you never knew. You don't know that guy. At some point I told you he was a native doctor. He was a Tsikamtanda with his uncle who is going through the most in Chikurubi right now, in prison. He's in prison right now, and I'll tell you the reason why he's in prison. There's more, my people. Before you follow these wolves, do an investigation. Find out where they are coming from, where they got their powers, if they have the powers. So when they start coming now confessing that they have more powers than their gods, you understand what they mean. So dislodge all that narrative of thinking that Makandiwa is better, he is more gifted than God. No, he was not referring to our God. He was referring to my praise. The story of my praise begins and it continues until you get to the bottom of this. This was the biggest blunder of his life. Him coming, claiming and trying to cause confusion to people, saying that he's better gifted than God. Well, till I meet you again on the next episode of the Latin series, it's Mr. PDT. In I'm out.